Hi there, I'm Tyrell Mara, founder of the Human Performance Project. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about this trend that we're seeing around cold exposure, whether it's getting in a cold tub, into cold open water, or just having cold showers every day. First things first, anytime we're talking about cold, anytime we're talking about being immersed in water, especially in, open water and a cold tub, safety is always first, and ideally having some type of supervision, right? So doing this in groups or being guided, I think is critically important, especially as we introduce the concept of cold. In this video, I want to kind of break it down into two different areas. One is what's going on, right? Why go through the agony and the discomfort of immersing yourself in cold water, whether it's a tub or a shower? What are the benefits? Why should we do it? What's going on there? And then I want to talk a little bit about how, right? How should you go about doing this if it's your first time, and how can you think about giving yourself some guidelines and some parameters on how to get the most out of your cold exposure, ideally, your daily ritual of getting in the cold. So let's talk about what's going on first. When we get into cold water, we are triggering, we are kind of prompting or stimulating a nervous system response. You all will know this. Anytime you've gotten into even remotely cold water, you kind of get that, tightening of the stomach and breath creeping up into your lungs. Sometimes when you see someone walking out into a cold ocean or lake, you'll kind of see them even moving up to try and stay out of the water. All of this, what's happening underneath is we're getting this sympathetic nervous system response, right? So our body is moving into a sympathetic fight or flight state. The research is showing that when we do that in an intentional and deliberate way, there are all these positive benefits, but that intent, right? Our mindset, our attitude going into the cold is critically important. If you're being forced into the cold, if you were to fall into, cold water, then you're going to have a really negative, intense response. Your body is going to try and get you out of that. You're going to trigger your survival mechanisms. And that's not what we're going for here, right? We're not going to the point where our body goes into full shock lockdown. We really want to be deliberate, intentional, and ideally slow when we're moving into the cold water so that we're getting that fight or flight response. We can feel it in our body, but we are in control. So we're getting that sympathetic response. There's lots of positive chemicals that are molecules that get released through that process, especially when we're doing it through a controlled positive mindset. But the magic, the thing that we then get access to when we go into the cold and we get a bit of that fear, that fight or flight response, is that we get to use our breath consciously to stimulate something called our vagal nerve, which is a nerve that kind of starts at the top of our spine, at the bottom of our brainstem, and goes all the way down our body. And it really is the communicator, the conduit between our body and our brain. And we have the ability to strengthen this. And what our vagal nerve does is it allows us to stop, to break, and slow that sympathetic response. So our body doesn't just escalate more and more into this stressed fight or flight state. We actually can move back into a rest, digest, parasympathetic state. We do that through our breath, through slowing our breath down, through really using like a breathing through the nose, breathing out the mouth, and then a very nice controlled inhale for maybe 2, 3, 4 seconds, and a longer exhale, so 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds. You can also think about breathing down into your gut, into your diaphragm, the lower parts of your body, versus the breath being up in your chest. All of these things will be hard, right? When you get into the cold water, you are in a panicked response. You are breathing in your chest. Your breaths are short, probably through the mouth. And just being able to transition into a slow, relaxed state through your breath is strengthening that vagal nerve, the vagal tone, and it's allowing you to move from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Now, why is that important, right? Why go through all the trouble of this and even know what's going on? Well, the reason is that because in our day-to-day lives out in the world, in our families, in our relationships, in our corporate and career pursuits, and maybe in sport, we're under pressure, we're under stress. We confront and experience these stressful responses all the time. And so when we're in the real world, or the quote-unquote real world out in our jobs and in our families and our relationships, how do we react to that? And do we have a set of tools to be able to calm us down, to walk us back from that really panic type response into a more present, mindful, and calm poised state, right? To have that deliberate response, that poised and skilled response, like Bruce Lee would call it. And so we train in the cold in kind of a safe but uncomfortable space so we can really be at our best and perform at our best when we're out in our day-to-day lives pursuing our goals and ambitions. So that's a little bit around why expose yourself to the cold, right? Why build up this daily practice of cold exposure? We are triggering our sympathetic response. We're getting really great molecules in our body when we do this in a positive mindset, like dopamine, adrenaline, and a number of other things that really last with us throughout the day. We're increasing our energy and our focus and our attention, but we are also strengthening that ability to shift consciously between fight or flight and rest and relax. We're building that muscle so that we can go and take that out into the real world. Okay, so what happens when you get in the cold, right? What is the response that you're gonna feel, and how can you make sure that your practice is getting the most for you, the most out of it for you? And I'll talk through a couple different progressions as we go along here. Okay, so now you're in the cold, and we'll talk a little bit about both the cold shower and the cold tub. First things first, the concepts that you need to think about are uncomfortably cold but safe. You have to keep safety first. Again, anytime we're talking about water, really be prudent and diligent. Have someone there to kind of guide you and support you. Now, the discomfort is important because it doesn't need to be excruciatingly cold. It just needs to get you out of your comfort zone. That's what's going to trigger that sympathetic response. And so, that's going to be different for everyone, and it can be. And this is where you really have to listen to your own body and be gentle, be kind, while still knowing you've got to push it a little bit. You've got to get over that discomfort. For some folks, when you get into a cold tub for the first time, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be enough. Getting kind of your belly button, maybe your diaphragm in the water, and even at this point, right, you're going to be focusing on just breathing. Your body will likely already be tensing up. Now, if you can focus on that breath, right, the 1 to 2 inhale to exhale ratio, breathing through your nose, out of your mouth, focusing on breathing into your gut, so down in the bottom part of your body versus not up in your chest here. Eventually what you'll realize is you kind of start to relax a little bit. And so at this point you have the opportunity to start pushing it a little bit if you want to, introducing a little bit more adversity, a little bit more challenge. There's some progressions that we can think about. So potentially one thing you might notice is your hands when you get in are gripping for safety, right? And this is largely a subconscious, unconscious protective mechanism where I might need safety, I might feel like I need support. And so even just taking your hands off and letting a little bit of that upper body, I can feel it right there when my armpits get in the water, that gives me a little jolt, right? Then I can put my hands in and you can see my shoulders kind of pop up a little bit. All of these are little mechanisms that we can trigger that, that fight or flight, that sympathetic response, and then breathing through it. And then finally here, this is another big journey, right? I for me personally, going from your chest to leaning back, getting your shoulders fully under the water, and you can see I've got to even breathe through that a little bit. And then finally I can go from here all the way down to just having my everything except for my head and the bottom of my skull kind of touching the water here. And again, these are all sensitive areas. You can hear even when I'm talking, I'm up in the top of my chest, and so I've really got to focus on slowing everything down. One of the other things that you might realize is when you're doing this, whether it's in the shower or in a cold tub, is you may feel like you're fully exhaling, you may feel like you're breathing out of your stomach, but I would encourage you to really check in with yourself every breath, every movement, because what you may find is that your body immediately tenses back up and it goes into that protective shock mechanism. And so even on those exhales, check at the bottom of your exhale, check to see if there's like 10, 15, 20, 30 more % there. And then maybe think about on those exhales at the very end, even though you've got a little bit more, just letting that go and even giving yourself a little vacation, a little pause at the bottom of your exhale. A few of the other things that I think can kind of help if you feel really adapted, really comfortable in the temperature of water that you're in. You can obviously put your face down in the water, right? I'm still in a very controlled, safe response kind of area here, but I can dip my face in the water. All of these things are meant to just incrementally increase the discomfort, to trigger sequentially trigger a little bit more sympathetic fight or flight response. And with that, every level we have to work a little bit more. We have to strengthen our vagal nerve, our vagal tone, being able to transition from sympathetic to parasympathetic. The last thing that I'll share is if you're doing this in the shower, obviously getting the water on the back of your head, the back of your neck, and then eventually maybe having the water hit you directly in the face. Again, as long as you're able to control that breath, you don't go into a total shock mode. And then continue to start to play around with how can you use the breath to make it a little more challenging. Maybe breathing out while the water is on your head. I find for me when I'm in the shower, breathing out with my mouth open makes it a little bit harder. And I actually want to go and push just the edges of that comfort zone where I'm still in control. So hopefully this helps you kind of moderate and modulate the exposure and the ritual that you have around cold. At the end of the day, uncomfortable but safe. Go slow, be deliberate, and be intentional, right? Be in control. But then find where you can use the cold to uncover those pockets of discomfort where you feel your body tense up again. Immediately go to the breath. Use that breath as your break, as your stop against that fight or flight response. Then remember, right, connect that to anytime you're out in the real world. You have that same muscle. You don't need the cold. You're training it every day in the cold so that when you're out there, in your athletic sport, in your career, on the home front, you have a tool to be able to help you moderate where do you need to be in terms of your system, your response, so that you can show up at your best. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, hearing your feedback, and understanding how I can continue to provide content and feedback to you to help in your journey. Last thing, if you're getting out of a cold tub and you've been in for any meaningful period of time, take your time getting out. Ideally have some steps. Your motor reflexes will always be a little bit compromised, so really take your time, be careful, even get someone to help you out if you need it. That's all for now.